Hi, everyone. Welcome to another exciting adventure in podcasting and videoing. This is Words, Images, and Worlds, and I am a former middle school teacher. I taught middle school for 8 years, so I'm always excited to talk with someone who creates and crafts in that world. And for that audience, on this episode, delighted to be talking with author Laura Segal Stegman. Laura, thank you for jumping in and joining.
My pleasure. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, delighted to have you. You are, of course, the author of the Summer of Luck trilogy, visually represented behind you with Summer of Luck, Ready or Not, the Chambered Nautilus. So wonderful work there. And thank you also for sharing a copy of Nautilus with me so that I could check it out before we talk.
Well, thank you for reading it.
Yeah, yeah. A wonderful series that develops these three characters will certainly give you the chance to introduce them. And I love the mixture, kind of the supernatural, along with relevant topics, believable characters, and this really nice kind of three-story arc. So glad to dig into that a little bit.
Thank you. Do you want
hmm
me to talk about them now?
Well, sure. I was going to ask what connected you with storytelling as an origin part, and then maybe we can talk about how that led to them.
Of course, of course. I was a big reader as a kid, and I read just tons and tons of books. And a lot of times I reread because I had favorites and I would just read them over and over again.
Mhm.
And my favorites were books where there was a little bit of magic, not like set in some weird fantasy world, although I read a couple of those too, but books where the kids were real in their real lives, and they had real life problems, and their solutions to their problems were real life, but they did have help, as everyone has help or needs help, certainly when you're growing up. Sometimes not only from real world adults, but from magical influences, whether it was a um, uh, I'm just trying to think of an example. One of my favorite books is The Diamond in the Window, which is by a woman named Jane Langdon. And these kids in that book, they go on these magical adventures in their dreams. And that book influenced me greatly when I came up with the idea for Summer of Luck. So I think that it's really important for kids to know that they're not alone. And I
Mhm.
found that out when I was reading books. All the things that I thought were wrong with me or that I struggled with when I was a kid, if I read a book where a kid in that book had that same issue, it was transformative. It was
Mhm.
magic. It was magical. So
Mhm.
that's I think that's the best way I can explain it.
Awesome, awesome. Very well said. And I am curious about both the inspiration and the process. What would you want people to know about that for the Summer of Luck?
Well, the inspiration for Summer of Luck, I worked in I have professionally been a publicist
hmm
all my adult life, and I have had a great career in that field, and I've loved it. And I've met a lot of really interesting people and done a lot of meaningful projects over the years. And as part of that work, um, I didn't really realize this till later, but I became a storyteller in
hmm
that, because when I was coming up with an idea to pitch a client to the media, I had to tell a story that was interesting and compelling and newsworthy. So I had to come up with often a one, especially when we went to email for communication, a one subject line to get them to open it. And telling
hmm
a story in 5 words is a challenge. So I also came to a point in my life a couple decades ago where I was doing some creative work besides my publicist work. I had a writing partner, and I was doing some storytelling in the context of that work. And one day I thought to myself, I want to write a book for kids. I don't remember exactly why, since it was quite some time ago, but I remembered, I thought of The Diamond in the Window, and I thought of how I read it over and over and over again all these years. And I've read, a lot of other middle grade books. I didn't really start reading contemporary middle grade books until then, which was really helpful in writing. But yeah, so I thought about a story where I could tell about three kids who were struggling to find their voices.
Mhm.
And in Summer of Luck, there's Darby, who's 11 in the first book, and she stutters and very insecure and afraid of the criticism she gets from her mom about everything, including her stutter. And then there's Naz, who just moved to this country, the US, from Morocco with his mom, and he speaks Arabic and French, but he's just learning English, so he's struggling a little. And then the third, Naz is 10, and the third character, Justin, is 12. And he has lost his father right before these three kids meet. And and as a result of his grief and his difficulty in expressing it, he just shuts down completely and doesn't talk at all.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
these three kids meet at summer camp, and as luck would have it, they hear this calliope music, which is the kind of music that a carousel plays. And when they hear that music, they can hear each other's thoughts. They can telepathically communicate, which comes in very handy for kids who struggle with communicating. And they sneak off to this abandoned warehouse, which is next to their camp, and they meet a ghost who haunts it. And this ghost haunts it's an abandoned warehouse, but they see it as this magical carnival. And this ghost enlists their help in helping him reunite his feuding adult kids. And in return, he takes them on magical adventures, and they learn how to find their voices, and they find self-acceptance in themselves just as they are. So that's a story of Summer of Luck. And that was really a story that meant a lot to me, because I just felt that I wanted to write a book that kids today would feel the way I felt when I found someone to relate to in a
Mhm.
book,
Mhm.
and to overcome a challenge that would be, seemingly impossible, but with support and friendship and all the themes that are in Summer of Luck, self-acceptance, they felt better about themselves. So that was my goal, and I hope that I achieved that. I've heard from people who've read the book that it meant a lot to them. So there's nothing better than that.
Always wonderful to write something that connects. And you're talking about the middle grade space. What, as an author, as somebody that's worked in publishing for some time, what sort of makes that a special space for you?
Well, when kids are the age that kids are in middle grade books, which is anywhere from 8 to 13,
Hmm.
it's an interesting time of life, as you well know from being a teacher. And kids are discovering themselves. They're starting to realize they're separate human beings from their parents, and yet they're very, of course, connected, or their teachers, or whoever the adults are in their lives. And they are looking for who they are, and they are looking to figure out how to deal with things that are happening and changing in their bodies as they're growing up.
Hmm.
And it's a time, it's a magical time, and it's a really difficult time. And so I think that you see books today. I mean, when I was growing up, there were very few books that dealt with anything other than, you know, a certain type of character. Today, and over I started writing Summer of Luck 2 decades ago. So over that time, I have seen the growth of a vast number of books that deal with wherever you're from, there's a book about a kid like that, at least one. Whatever you struggle with, there's a book. There are books and books and books about that. So I think the middle grade book community, certainly the people who are writing for that age group, they understand all these same things that I'm saying, that books can help kids. They can also help kids with empathy and understand kids that are different from them, and kids that have completely different experiences, or kids that come from different countries, or kids that come from different cities, or kids that have different kinds of families. And I think that that's another really important point about middle grade, finding middle grade books, and the importance of libraries and kids being able to read and find books through their schools or through their librarians or through their families, that will help them understand the world better.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I know that there's also a thriving kid lit author community as well. So anything that you'd like to say about the community that you found in writing?
Yeah, that was incredibly important to me. For many years, I sort of toiled alone at my desk, and it took me a very long time not to write Summer of Luck, but to edit and polish and revise Summer of Luck. It
Hmm.
took so many years because I really didn't know what I was doing. As I said, I wrote my bios for clients, or press releases, or pitch letters. It was all nonfiction. I had no idea how to write fiction. I just sat down and wrote this book, and isn't this great? And no one else thought it was great. And so I saw that there was, I didn't have to just leave it static like that. I saw that there are ways of revising. I started connecting with people who helped me see. Somebody put me in touch with the development editor, so I worked with the development editor on Summer of L.U.K, who was amazing and showed me how to be a fiction writer, and how to address issues that kids would like there were several adults there still are several adults in the story, but there were so many different points of view in this book. It just wasn't working, and this development editor really helped me see that. And then after that, and I kept working and revising and revising. I can't even tell you how many revisions I did of Summer of L.U.K, but um, uh, it was when I started connecting with other middle grade writers
Hmm.
through, at the time, there still is on social media, as you say, there's a thriving author community, kidlit, and especially kidlit. And I found writers to swap manuscripts with, critique partners.
Hmm.
And I started getting feedback from people who really knew the middle grade market. I started reading voraciously contemporary middle grade books. And I started developing contacts and friends that supported me and knew what I was going through. And that was incredibly helpful as I trudged my way towards my getting my first publishing contract. And then once I became a published author, or that was going to be imminent, I joined a debut group of writers on Facebook, and it was incredibly helpful to be around people and to share not just struggles, but ideas and contacts and promotions and all kinds of things. And it was through that, once I had my contract, and with a small publisher, as many authors are, even authors with big publishers, we're a lot on our own with promoting our books, and we
Hmm.
have to do a lot of work to get attention in the huge publishing market. And so about 2 years ago, I I thought, well, why don't I try to put together a co-marketing group? I'd seen other authors doing this. So I reached out to some authors I knew, and bingo, within a very short while, we had this group. We have this group. It's called the Mighty Middle Grade Authors. There's 13 of us. And between us, we've published over more than 30 books, some wonderful people and wonderful books. And we do a lot of different things together. We do Twitter giveaways, and we do school visits. We have a website, mightymiddlegrade.com. We have a Twitter account, which is mighty MG authors, and we have an Instagram account. We do a lot of different things. I've been interviewing authors and other people on Instagram Live. I just did an interview last week with the narrator of my audiobook, who does hundreds of audiobooks. So I never would have had that platform. I don't mean the platform of Instagram. I mean the platform of this group of writers who support me and I support them. And when our books come out, we give boosts to their social media, and we come up with ideas. I've done two book festival panels with several of them because we live locally and we can do them together. We've pitched panels for, places across the country, and we've done all kinds of things because fortunately today, you don't have to physically be somewhere to appear somewhere. You can do a Zoom presentation or whatever it is. So, and then, just in terms of using my experience that I've been able to do with all this putting together this group, I'm doing a presentation in October for anyone who lives in Southern California, at a Society for Children's Book Writer and Illustrator, the SCBWI group, on building an author community. So if anyone's interested in that, check out my website and I'll have that information there.
Well, that leads very naturally to the last official question that I usually ask, which is what's next for you and where can readers find out more about your work?
Well, thank you. I would love for them to visit my website, which is laurastegman.com. Very easy to remember. And I have my social media is Laura Stegman, or at Laura Stegman on Twitter, and Laura_Stegman on Instagram. And what's next is, the Summer of L.U.K. audiobook just came out. I mean, all three books are now available wherever books are sold. And the audiobook came out from Tantor Media last week, was it? Or 2 weeks ago? And that's exciting because, I mean, to hear my book read or spoken is freaky. But it's very, very exciting. And then Ready or Not comes out in September, and Chambered Nautilus comes out in October. Meanwhile, I wrote a fourth book, which is not part of the series. It's a contemporary middle grade book that's slightly autobiographical. And even though, like, when I wrote Summer of L.U.K, I told you how long it took, but Ready or Not took a little over a year, and same for Chambered Nautilus. And that's because over the time I've become a better writer. Yeah. So that's people should keep that in mind for sure. And then I wrote this fourth book, as I said, and I finished it, and I'm like, great, I'm good to go. And again, you kind of learn, or I have learned, and I've had to learn this lesson over and over again. It wasn't ready. It wasn't ready for me to put out there to an agent or a publisher. So I have been, for the last year, revising and working, really hard on a revision for this book. I have an amazing critique group, and they are making so much difference. Just like I said, working with other writers in my genre has totally changed the course of my writing and helped me see things that I couldn't see on my own. And so I hope to finish that revision pretty soon. I also started a fifth book, again, unconnected. The fourth and the fifth are unconnected to the middle grade trilogy of Summer of L.U.K. But this one's a kind of a funny light book.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I started it and then I was like, no, no, no. From everything I've learned, it was not starting in the right place. So I don't know. I have like half a page. So that eventually I hope both of these fourth and fifth books might find uh, a publisher. We'll see. But I writing for middle grade books is as fulfilling to me as my publicist career, my career as a publicist. And I pretty much do that full time now, not publicity, the writing thing. And, writing and promoting and marketing myself and working with my publisher. And, it's just a joy. And
Mhm.
I'm so grateful to have found throughout my life, things that bring me a lot of joy. So thanks.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Glad to hear that there's more on the way. I know that the Summer of Luck works as a trilogy, so glad that those books are out in the world, and always glad to have you back to talk about work to come.
Thank you so much, Jason. It's been a pleasure talking.
Thank you.